Hi there, this is Andre. I'm here with the CEO and founder of the Nebula Group, Daniel Nel. Welcome.
Thanks, Andre. Great to be here.
Thank you. Today we're going to be unpacking many different topics from remote work, the impact that it's had on our culture, thinking back to when kind of the pandemic started at the beginning of last year and what steps we took. And obviously we're going to be diving down into much more impact it had on our business and looking at our team leads, our culture, and see how that shifted, from 5 years ago, what was it a year ago, and what it looks like today, and how our thinking is involved. So as a conversation starter for us, how do you see the rhythm now that you have playing out compared to what it was kind of 2 years ago, the shift between coming into office but also working from home, and how you blend those personally?
Yeah, thanks, Andre. I think the rhythm has really picked up. So I think the drum beat that we used to have was very much focused on weekly, 2 weekly. It actually changed now to be more daily.
Right.
So when the pandemic happened, is that immediately it's like a submarine.
Right.
Dive. You got to close the hatches.
Yeah.
And what you need to do, we close hatches, like make sure everybody's got oxygen. And our big thing about oxygen was we need to talk to one another.
Right.
We need to make sure everybody's okay, because when you're down there, you don't know what's happening.
Right.
And I think that's what happened with us. So the question you ask about, so what has changed a lot? I think in my perspective, and for myself personally, I always like to reflect on that, but I've changed my life also significantly about how do I need to lead myself,
right,
and set the example. And I think for us in a business, what we did well was that we speed up interactions,
right,
and some of those things we actually use now. I just take, for instance, our town hall meeting. That's now every week, and it's become like our most favorite kind of meeting. You know, everybody is up to date every week, and we used to have that every 3 months.
Right.
Now we're thinking that the cadence that it created with that every week, the difference that made. So that for me was like a big highlight that actually came out of the COVID scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to put into perspective for some of the viewers, that team, that town hall or that huddle that we instituted on a weekly basis was really just to tell people what was happening. Hey, these are the stats. This is an update on the change we have to the rules or something we're introducing. And now, through your leadership, it's evolved into something much more. And reflecting on one of the employees that have joined us in the last year, his reflection on something like the town hall was that it's the only time he gets to feel part of the company, because he's based in Joburg, where most of us are not. And that's the only time he can come together and meet other people that are doing the OTRs, which we'll unpack very, very soon. And I think that's been a good rhythm that we've instituted, just to do check-ins, provide vital information, but also just to feel part of the company again.
Absolutely. But I also feel the biggest part of that is not to give up on that.
Right.
Because when you start with this, it's happened. Also start plateauing, and then people say, "Oh, I'm wasting my time there." But it's not to give up.
Right.
So I just thought I'm going to push through.
Right.
Although people say maybe we have to step up our game to make it interesting.
Right.
So I think that has been quite nice for us.
Very much.
But maybe I can ask you a question.
Go for it.
Because you made a big move.
Sure.
Last year.
For sure.
So moving to Amsterdam.
Yes.
During the pandemic.
Right.
As a leader in a business, and I still remember the afternoon we had a conversation.
Right.
About what we're going to do, and I still remember clearly where I walked on the beach having a conversation with you.
Right.
How does that change your life, and were the things to be done?
Oh, for sure. So, I'm been in the company 7 years, just over going on to 8 now, and it was very much in the mindset during that period that we have to go and see our clients. We have to fly to Joburg for a 1-hour meeting to come back. Obviously, we're based in Cape Town. I have to see the team. I have to be involved. Our values still stayed the same. Trust, challenge, etc. still stayed very much the same. But you've had to feel connected. The pandemic and how we changed our culture and adjusted our culture meant that all of those values came right up to the surface, and we're going to unpack the OTRs. And when we started to unpack that, it felt very comfortable for me to be able to run my team and our dev teams remotely, because we had that feeling of not needing to police people, not needing to be involved, but still feeling very, very connected in the rhythm that we had set up, the weekly town halls, the daily check-ins we have with Exco, the stand-ups with the group. Those things that were in place are now all virtual, obviously enabled by a lot of the cloud stuff we had put in place, made it very, very comfortable for me to continue that rhythm from anywhere, from Cape Town, from Joburg, from Amsterdam. Others are in Durban. Another employee of ours is in the UK, Paul Bowles. And that became very, very comfortable to do. So I can feel the energy. I'm obviously back in Cape Town now for this week. And you miss the energy, I'm not going to lie. You miss feeling connected. You miss the braai. You miss the hey, how sunshine. Is this employee doing? I miss the sunshine for sure. And I think that shouldn't be underestimated, to do those in-person check-ins. I don't know. Maybe that becomes the quarterly rhythm that we set up.
But it's interesting, Andre. So for me, two things that also pops out of that for us is that, and I think we're all on the same page. We always assume positive intent.
Yeah, for sure.
To say, and that's why we could do that.
Right.
And the other part, we're saying, being nicely back into Cape Town. So if you remember, we spoke about this, I think 2 years ago, where we say,
the
destination.
Right.
Cape Town to become a destination for people to come and live or work here.
Right.
I don't know what to call it, nomadic kind of thing, but we wanted to attract some nomadic brains to come and spend time with us, so. And then you became the nomadic guy that actually went that way and come and visit, So, but it's working.
It's possible.
It's possible, So.
And I think we've seen now quite a shift going back, where maybe the rhythms weren't quite right at some of the other companies. Maybe the trust wasn't there, which is very much in place here. And now we're seeing people being forced back into office, and we're almost saying, guys, we're going to continue on like this and enable you to be able to work in this nomadic way, to have this flexibility. How do you think that's going to play out in terms of our culture and the way that we're going to see working and the work balance going on forward?
Yeah. Good question with that. So I think with this, it's going to be the trust have to increase even more.
Right.
And more positive intent will be there. But I think it's going to be very much focused about the employee experience we create for somebody to grow.
Right.
So whereas you'll be a bit more, how can I say, on your own, but your intention will be tested.
Right.
How good is your intention to actually step up, of growing and contributing?
Still putting up your hand.
Still putting up your hand, and then also leading yourself. Right. So I think how we sped up with our rhythm, people's growth as individuals will speed up as well.
Right.
Because you're going to be on your own.
Right.
And how do you then manage that? You need to discover. And I think I'm going to call it the word discover. You need to discover who you are, and this is the nice part when we actually talk about our everyone's got infinite potential and your X factor and your way of thinking or whatever. So now's the time. You must just do it.
Makes sense. You touched on an interesting part there, and I'm going to just reflect and maybe give context to the viewers, and then I'll ask the question. Is we used to have which in a good way, we had quite a flat structure. We still have that open door policy, but what we realized is that there's a power in having smaller, enabled, autonomous teams and team leads very close to that team to lead them. So we actually put in this team lead structure towards the end of last year, but then offered a lot of coaching of those team leads, realizing that they're fairly young team leads. And you also made 2 days a week available for you, 2 slots a week available for individual coaching through the whole company. How important do you think coaching is, and creating these smaller teams and then coaching those team leads? How important do you think it is in this culture compared to direct one-on-one management.
Yeah, no, it's game changing. Because, you know, if you think about, as I said, the leader always need to think about three things. So you either facilitate something when you're more than three people or two or more people in a room. You need to hear everybody's opinion. But when you're in a one-on-one, you coach, you ask questions, you listen. So big skill of leadership is listening what you hear and directing. And then the third one is about teaching. What can you teach? So coming back to the coaching side. So for me was, what I always do is when I have the conversations with them, because people are sometimes scared to have conversations with you. It's like, hey, can we have a coach? No, well, I need to speak to the CEO. It's like, what does he want to know? But I'm trying to, exactly, I'm trying to demystify that, to say, I'm actually part of your team. I'm that resource, that secret source. I hope so, that you can phone and you can speak to. And to get that lid off for you. And some interesting for me about that is always to test what is high and low. Because in between, you'll always find the topic to discuss. So my interesting questions with that was like, what are you most excited about right now? And you'll find out where's the high. And then the next question is, what are you most challenged about now? Then you find the low. And then in between those two, you find, this where you got to listen now to helping the person. And just share stories, you know. And I believe for us now, by planting that coaching culture with team leads, they will see lots of successes while coming. But it's a slow process. It's one of those things that you got to do the 20-mile march every day a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that we've seen the benefit of that as teams have spent time with you being coached on various topics, and you can see that play out when they're engaging with clients, when they're engaging with others, and even just reflecting on that time. Can we zoom out a little bit? So we're now mid-2021, we're in the middle of this, we're in South Africa, the third wave is coming up. But if we zoom out now a little bit, a lot of the stuff that we said we wanted to do, we're kind of sometime in the future put in plans to make that happen, and they came true. So when we first met, we said, you need a CTO in the business where I originally started. We need to build this product. And out eventually came OneView after doing a move. We said at that time we want a software company. We think that this is, especially in cloud software, we think this is going to be a big thing. We want to go international and find a good partner to do that with. We've done that with Microsoft, and certainly at the start of that. What is that next milestone you think for us, most likely on an international front? What does that look like for us, and how are some of the things that we're doing now leading towards that as a software company, as a SaaS company?
I must tell you, I ask myself that question all the time. But just before we dive into just a reflection again, when I first met you. We had the meeting, I think we had coffee at Crystal Towers. And this is probably something to share with people watching this video as well, is that when you have an idea and a dream and you meet somebody, that's part of what you have to do as a leader. You've got to sell something to that person, and that person must be open and ripe for it at that time. And so 7 years, almost 8 years later, we had multiple conversations, and now you're a big shareholder in the business, which I'm very proud of. So coming back to your question about the steps that we take. So looking fast forward, so we have this big, hairy, audacious goal that we've got. And we said we want to be $1 billion business owned by 150 people, you know. And 150 people, as you know, we spoke about this, the Dunbar number. You can only have 150 meaningful relationships. But then you also look a little bit back. What is the sort of the vivid vision? And we had that conversation about now seeing how things pan out. And I think for us is also to have a good, vivid vision, but also be aware of it can change. Not to say, if I don't achieve it, then there's a problem. So right now, in a conversation we had, we spoke about being one of the top 10 ISVs in the cloud space, in the SaaS business on globally. You know, what it means? I don't know, but it sounds damn good to aim for.
Right.
So now working with Microsoft and experiencing our success there about coming up with ideas or
Right.
whatever. So that is good for us. Ideally, for what I see next, that will determine a lot of our course and direction will be to have global companies using our services and platform and be able to support them.
Right.
To make sure that the ship is actually good for us now, to then later on turn up the speed.
That's it.
So we believe we've got an amazing thing.
Right.
So we would like other people to taste that as well. And now with this, in South Africa, we thought about 20s and 50s.
Right.
What about we start thinking about thousands?
Right. That's right.
Can we handle it? So I think that sort of is going to be the test for us, really, to how to button that up, you know, and making sure that is
That's right.
there, you know, yeah.
And tying some of our conversations together, you know, putting in the team lead structure, not only in the dev team, but across the business in customer success and marketing and in the sites, has created that ability for these 150 people not to be run from one central place, but to be run individually and enabling them. In addition to that, the move to the UK with Paul, myself to Amsterdam, us appointing people across South Africa and even thinking, how would we enable a global workforce? I know our thinking has grown from how do I attract and be the best company in South Africa to how do I take my solutions, which I believe are world-class, through a partnership like Microsoft, and we can actually think globally. We're not thinking in 10s and 20s and 50s, we're thinking about thousands, 10,000s. But we don't want to lose our goal and our idea of the 150 connected people. I think that portion has been very, very exciting for me to unlock our thinking and the things that we've been putting in place, the automation, the DevOps culture, the team lead structure has enabled us to get to this.
Absolutely.
And there I wanted to ask you, yes, our vivid vision is changing, our direction is changing, and we can adjust that sometimes quicker or slow it down, but it's on the back of building blocks that have been put in place for years, in terms of 4 years ago making the decision to move to cloud, instilling our ownership, teamwork, results culture, putting in a DevOps culture, opening and your vision early to set up companies internationally. Talk to me about how you think about that planning, and that you mentioned now that 20-mile march that you've got to start doing. You can't do these things overnight. They appear to happen overnight, but actually it's as a result of a lot of planning that's been coming for years.
Absolutely. And you know, when I do a lot of my thinking is when I'm cycling.
Is it?
Then my mind and I just come up stories, and you guys know when I travel overseas, I come back with a bag full of tricks.
10,000 stories, yeah.
So, but I think the most significant thing recently, after we had the BHAG and the international companies, is really for us to say, for scaling right now, we need to create a new brand. Yes, we created now our OneNebula.com global brand.
Right.
But the other biggest significant thing for me is actually the people brand.
Right.
The N48X.
Right.
There's actually infinity sign and the 48 and X. So for people to join now a people brand on a global front.
Right.
So somebody that works with us becomes a N48Xer that can work in any company.
Right.
Your career now has been defined a bit more about being part of a people brand.
Right.
Now that for me was because when you're in the office and you hear people talk, say, I'm Nebula, I'm 48.
Right.
It's not my story, this is that story.
Right.
How do you break down those boundaries? And that led up to the story about OTR, our promise to one another.
That's right.
OTR, ownership, teamwork, results.
Right.
Linked up with the people brand, the formula that binds us together. Now that, for me, I think that's going to be our next big game changer.
That no matter where you are in the world, no matter which company you're in, where you're growing to, you're part of this common identity, and I can believe and I can see and feel that identity.
Absolutely. And now, you know, we built this identity service, like to log in anywhere. Right. Very similar. Right. So N48X is like, I can log in any company and work there, you know?
Correct.
So, and that's for me is sort of the massive scaling thing that I believe in the future of getting there. And yeah, that for me was also, but you think about it, but then suddenly it just dawned on you. It's like, why not? And this is the nice thing about us. We can just try things.
Exactly.
In your experience about try things, can you remember when you just had a thought and you just do it?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that came from, recently going into the marketplace. It's been 2 years coming, but the thinking then was that, how can we reach global? We see we're registering global companies, we have a global partnership, but how do we actually access that physically, technically access the market? And we thought back then that B2B marketplaces, and therefore the Microsoft marketplace with us being partners, would be a way that we would enable that. Now, fast forward 2 years to where we are now, that has proven to be true, and you see that even growing much, much more. But that was just from starting to think, how can we put one of our solutions in there? Let's test it over one December period. One of the guys wasn't going away because he was getting married in Feb, so he worked over December. And he started just to try and connect and put our solution in the marketplace. And at that time, it wasn't successful, but we proved out the concept would work. And obviously, where we are now, we have a whole product enabling that. And that's turned into a whole new set of revenue stream and innovation. And of course, our main product, OneViews, is in the marketplace as well, and attracting customers from the US, from the UK, from Australia, from Hong Kong. And I think that's been an enabler that started as something of, let us test, let's experiment and see what can come from that. And so much does. And how important it is to have that lab thinking.
And there's a good point there. So, and we see it a lot in big corporates as well. They don't want to experiment.
Right.
And we say the world that you're in right now is, we are part of your business model must be, you must be able to test things.
That's right.
So, do you have an example where we actually did something that we tested and really
came to life,
blew up, and actually something else morphed out of it?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, let's start with our thinking with 48 Software. That was a conversation that you had with a CIO of a company, and said, we've really got it right. The combination of working in an agile way, having a DevOps culture, and putting our solution in cloud, we feel we've come onto something that has really accelerated our development, our approach. We attract good people, and he was a bit stuck. And that was some of that. He said, okay, come and experiment. We met with his leadership team, proposed the solution. Some brave soul put up his hand and said, okay, I'll experiment and test. That's one of our biggest clients, and I think we've made one of the biggest impacts in their world as well, in terms of how they gone through digital transformation in their business, specifically on the IT side, and how they place all their orders internally, how they innovate and release stuff into the market, is all based on that initial experiment 4.5 years ago.
But it's interesting, you said some brave soul put up his hand.
That's right.
I like that. So that is the culture we want. We want brave souls to say, let's just do it, and I just think sometimes when you fail at something, it's a method that you can actually tick off. It's not, you don't have to go that route anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So just coming back to the our N48X side, so the 150. So we put that number down, right, but that number probably will change.
Maybe.
Exactly, but it was like really interesting to be. How do you feel about that? You number 8 or number 9? I can't remember, but I think it's like.
Can't remember, somewhere there.
Yeah.
Sub 10, which is great.
Yeah.
I mean, it gives you that sense of identity. It gives you that that sense of achievement, and that people want to aspire to be where you are. They aspire to, I also want to be able to say X. I want to be able to say I was part of that first team, and there's still that identity that sits in the business. I was one of the first employees. I was there when we launched OneView. I was there when we took it to cloud. I was there when we did the first project at 48. I was there when we went international. So people want to be able to tell that, because ultimately that's the storytelling that you get to say, to say I write 10 lines of code, or I submit an RFP, or I send an email. This is happening in every business, but to be able to be part of the story that goes with being at a client or being within a team, and therefore, hey, I was number X when the company achieved this. I think that's significant for people. That's the story that will live on way beyond the ups and downs that happen on a day-to-day basis. And you embodied this a little bit in our people brand, yes, in N48X, but also our promise to each other, our ownership, teamwork, and results. That OTR thinking that comes out every single week in town hall. We have someone sharing their OTR with us. Sometimes even a team doing that. Where did that thinking coming from? Where did that come from?
Yeah, good question. So many years ago, I was thinking about what promise can you make to one another.
Right.
It's like when you're in battle or experience something, you want to know somebody's got your back.
Right.
And you also like to have your clients to know that you have their back.
Right.
And I thought about this, and some inspiration actually came to read a story about the Navy SEALs as well, where they spoke about extreme ownership. And then I thought, but what will be a good promise that we can make to ourselves, to one another as teams, and also to the clients. And the initial part was that we actually had two promises, one to the client and one internally. I thought, gee, now I got to remember two. Right. Can we just have one? Right. And then we explain it to the other ones, to both parties, to the both parties, and so brainstormed this a lot with the brand strategists at that time, but it have to be catchy as well. It have to be like when you think about it, it's like you feel, you get goosebumps and this kind of thing. Right. And then this came up with a story about OTR, ownership. So if you want to work with us, you need to take ownership of what you do. We won't hire you if we need to baby you. Right. Why? Also because we trust you. Right. And then we say teamwork. You're always going to be in a team. Right. You're never going to be alone. Similar what we want to say to a client as well is that you're never going to be alone. If something happens, somebody else will pick you up. So that is the whole teamwork concept with it. And then the story about results as well. You have to produce quality. You have to produce results. And we always would like to do something extra. Right. What is it extra? And it also, results can mean anything. For a client, your innovation, push yourself hard, discovery. So now we interweave in that now into the business. So that everybody just think about that, and it's a good conversation starter as well. For sure. But when we hear this and in a town hall, everybody's got a different OTR. So it's like a fingerprint.
They've got a different view of how it comes together.
Yeah. And now when you have the various team members sit in a team and they say, what is our promise to one another?
Right. Right.
If I go and leave, I want to go and leave. I need to go. Right. Then they say, don't worry.
And I've got my back. Yeah.
I've got your back. Yeah. If I'm sick or something happens, I've got your back. Right. Because we believe always it's like family first. Your health is more important than anything. Right. So I think that has been quite a significant thing for us. But also coming back again, just keep on talking about it.
Right. Like, something you touched on in your OTRs was in the results portion, innovation. So results are not always just from working hard or I'm going to work all weekend to try and achieve this result. A key portion there is that innovation that you want to come out. And you have quite a different view on invention and innovation. And what do we expect as part of that, I guess, OTR and promise to each other, that we promise to innovate. We promise to try and make something better. Unpack that a bit and maybe share with us your thinking between invention and innovation and what people can expect from that.
So if you see our payoff line, so the reason why we started the business many years ago was about for you to improve as a person. Right. Then we got what did it mean for clients is a smarter way. Right. So if you think about invention and innovation, invention is like a once-off thing. Right. So there's not many of that in the world.
Right.
But innovation is a I can say is a practice of thinking about a smarter way all the time.
Right. Right.
So and it must become a mindset in a culture of a business,
right,
to keep on doing that all the time.
Right.
Because if you and the reason for that is that it keeps momentum going.
Right.
It keeps something fresh. And it's good conversations to have, and that for me also shows a lot of progress.
Right.
So a lot of people sometimes would like to say, this is now perfect.
Right. Right.
But they never get to that stage.
Yeah.
And we had this
What does that
conversation
mean?
with
Yeah.
what does that mean? Is that, but if you show progress, that is also success.
Right.
Yeah. So just in a nutshell, then for the innovation side is to keep momentum, to keep the momentum effect, so that there's kinetic energy that continuously happen.
Right.
That you don't have to always have to kickstart something, but it becomes part of your culture. You know? So, but it takes a long time, Andre.
Yeah.
So
To have that patience with that.
absolutely. What is the OTR meant to you in your leadership?
Yeah, for sure. So, as you've said, we've been able to use that in many of our conversations coming back to each other. The values that we have in the company, together with OTR, lets us guide our decision making. And that, some 2 or 3 examples quickly. For example, one of the clients came to us and wanted to build something that would quite honestly be no innovation or invention at all. You know, it would just be rebuilding something that existed. And applying the way that we think, our mindset, our OTR, as a team, we said, we need to go back to this client, and as much as we would love to have them as a client, what they're asking us to build is already built and it doesn't make any sense. Let's present that back to them. Let's show them what's possible in the future and what steps they can take, which in the short term meant, of course, a client that we wouldn't have, but long term meant we're taking ownership of the decisions we make. We will be historically right to not build this piece of software, and I think ultimately respected by that client. I would hope to say, okay, these guys really did right by us, that they were still able to show the results of what they wanted. We considered and obviously discussed it as a team, and I think that is not common, certainly in some of the new employees that were quite nervous to have this conversation initially, that this is not a client we're going to be able to take on, because of course there's an impact to us. They were quite nervous about that, and when they saw and felt that OTR and our values come to life, a lot of that made sense to them. You know, that all of a sudden when I'm hearing that in the town hall, it's actually real and they can feel it and they can put a practical example to that. I think that's where it shines through, when there's real world examples that you can talk to where you lived up to your values. It's not just on the wall or a discussion where it's like, oh, I see how it plays out on my day-to-day basis.
Something you touch on there is some of the key for us as well, is that OTR, we want to filter through to your life.
That's right.
Into your relationships as well.
Right.
So people must know you as a person that takes ownership.
Right.
That are for the greater good of everybody.
Right.
And that you're reliable in terms of results, you know. So that is so important. So maybe another, just an angle or segue, in your world now, I've been in the 30s and we're hiring the mid-30s, you know. So what do you think is sexy for the people to come and work for us?
Yeah, for sure. I think 2 things there. Number one, being able to be inspired by what they're working on. They have, and this gets overused too much in industry now, but to have a purpose of what I'm doing. Am I just doing this thing to send this email, to write this piece of code, or is there some purpose behind it? What is the outcome I'm going to achieve? What difference am I going to make to somebody's life in the world, for my team member? You know, that I'm contributing to something that's going somewhere. I'm not just showing up and doing the same thing. I think that's important. Also important, and you've been very good about reminding us about this, and it's very true how important it is, that they have a clear path on how they can learn and progress. Where am I now? Where am I going to be tomorrow? And it's not always as predictable, but know that I don't have to keep on doing this. If I learn, if I grow, I know I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps, and that could be in different companies, and it could be very, very different. So I think that's really important to them. And then last but not least, some of the decisions that we make, putting in the home allowance, allowing work from home, creating certainty where there is a world of uncertainty to say, guys, we will be working from home for the rest of the year. It will be a hybrid environment. This is our plan, without really knowing what was going to happen in the world, gives them that certainty that, okay, we're in control as much as we can be, and we're looking out for them, putting them first, and then again, not just talking about it, but actually living it by putting in these things. I think those things come together when they're discussing it, and certainly now when they're discussing it with colleagues and friends outside of the business, how different businesses are handling it. Some well, others not so well. You would see that in the news. And then I think that real excitement, motivation, appreciation even for some of that we've put in place that make it exciting to work here, that people want to be part of that. I feel that quite often, and in all of our one-on-ones, a lot of that comes up. How did that first, I guess, thinking from your side, when we started to see the news come out, and it's not only now, it could, before you've done this multiple times where you've seen something that you could see on the horizon was going to cause quite a lot of disruption, and then acted pretty quickly to rustle things up and get everyone together. Where does that come from? Is that some of your, I have an inside, track in terms of some of your stories from when you were in the Navy or when you were a young engineer at Sprint and at Telkom. The resourcefulness and kind of seeing around the corner that you needed to have to start to implement this. And this seems to be the case in many of these scenarios. Tell us a story or two about how you see that. How do you practice looking around corners? Many leaders would love that. They would love to have that capability, because of course that puts them one step ahead.
Yeah. Thanks, Andre, for that interesting question. So the higher you are in leadership, is the most uncertain things are happening.
Right.
So it's always blurry.
Right.
So and that's it's like a spy plane flying over the globe.
Right.
You just see a small, but they take a picture.
Right.
And then when they blow up the picture, they see various kind of things.
Right.
So I guess that has been what's interested me a lot, in really blowing up that picture and then creating my mind. So I've come up with a bit of a formula how I do these various things, and it came through practice and reading a lot, thinking about scenarios, thinking about what will make us stop trading.
Right.
I'm always look at what is the
worst
bottom part.
Right.
It's like if you hit the ocean and the submarines or whatever, you can't go deeper. Right. You're stuck.
Right.
And if you're 800 meters, you're in pieces. You're
That's
not
it,
going to be. So you want to hit the bottom still when you're intact.
Yeah.
So that for me is always like the fathoming part of this. When I look at something coming, to say, what is that bottom to expect?
Okay.
So, and then I built the scenarios around the bottom.
Right.
And to really make sure that bottom is that we still intact.
Right.
So coming back to the submarine scenarios, that some of them can only do 300 meters. Yeah. But if you're in 800 meters, you're dead.
That's it.
So you want to make sure that we can just land on that 300
But the worst that happens is we get to 300 or we stop there.
Exactly.
But now what are the scenarios
What
above
are the
that?
scenarios above that? But have certainty about the bottom.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of companies potentially didn't think right.
Not honest with themselves.
Exactly.
Or, not planning maybe correctly.
Absolutely.
And again, coming back to what we chatted about earlier, that planning can't happen when the bad thing happens. It needed to have happened already, assuming that that's going
Absolutely. And then it's built on the scenarios for us to say, right, that bottom for us is we can't run out of cash.
Right.
Fortunately, we've been a smart way of doing that.
Right.
The next thing is our people. What if our people get sick?
Right.
What do we anticipate will be the sickness ratio on other people? What's going to be like that? So, and what's going to be the impact on our clients?
Right.
What do we think of that? So then we started building those kind of layers on top of that, and that became sort of our plan.
Right.
And then when it happened, we waited. Okay, where are we going to land? Are we going to land now 300 meters or 200 meters?
Right.
So what happened is we didn't land on 300 meters.
Right.
We not on the bottom.
Right.
And by preparing those various kind of scenarios and rehearsing that up front with the team, that helped us a lot. And from my side, it's just consistently just be visible about that.
Right.
Talk about it, and then adjust it. But create a cadence of that faster.
Right.
So that's where the town hall meeting came in, and with the exco's.
To share updates.
Updates, like we met immediately from meeting once a week. We met every morning, 7 o'clock.
Exactly.
And just keep on piling the information into that to say, where are we now?
And to create that certainty that I think was important was we had, I've forgotten how many scenarios, multiple scenarios, 5, 6, 7 maybe, but only one plan.
Exactly.
So there's always one plan. This was clear. This was what was certain, and we gave that certainty. And then the scenarios would be if this, then that. If this happens, then we're going to kick in this scenario, and that will be the one plan
absolutely. And
keep on adjusting.
Yeah, and a big lesson out of that is that when in a crisis, you must have a simple plan.
Right.
You can't have a complex plan.
Yeah.
Because you have to mobilize people.
Yeah.
So that's why we actually just come up with 3 things.
Right.
We just wanted cash. First monitor the people.
Right.
Are the people okay?
Yeah.
Cash, and then to see what process is going to fall apart.
Right.
That we need to do. And that's how we navigate. And then sometimes it became sort of the hallmark of going forward again, But then you sort of then you got to start moving out of the mode to say, I'm in a crisis.
Right.
Because now this is actually the world is like that right now.
Right.
So now you can't just call it crisis. It's like, this is my new world.
This is how it is.
This is how it is. So how do I create energy? How do I create positive intent, by motivation? Do business in this kind of world, so that So the interesting part for us is, it's always coming back to people.
That's
it. So.
And you talk there about getting better all the time and improving all the time. You have a study full of books. And your approach to, I guess, gathering knowledge and acquiring knowledge, because your main strength of your strength finder is a learner, you have an interesting way of reading various books, but you don't read from cover to cover. You look at it and you look for maybe some inspiration or something that maybe jumps out at you, maybe a book you read before, and then you seem to find a chapter. Chat me through that approach to learning and that discovery that you have.
Sure. Andre, so in Strength Finder, in terms of learning, you've got a balcony moment, you've got a basement moment. So you're right in my basement moment.
Exactly, yeah. This is it. We're unpacking it,
Because this is like, my brain is like, I want to read more, I want to do this.
Right.
And when I Google something for the 10th time, the same topic, I should have stopped at the third time.
Yeah.
But very good at that. I very seldom finish a book that I started.
Right.
So I thought, okay, what's going to be an interesting part of that? So something for me is every morning early when I do what we call the 10-10-10 kind of, and
Just unpack that a bit more. Maybe people don't know what 10-10-10 is.
So it's about what's my purpose for today.
Right.
Really think about that, and then what am I grateful for, and then read something positive about it. But then I added things into that, some of the habits I'm trying to work on, and some of the buckets I consistently think about. But in that is when I read something, and that's where it comes in that I don't want to just stick to a chapter. There's a thought in my mind when I read something about, and it comes to something in my mind that's stuck a lot about vision.
Right.
So I've got a vision, but does the people believe my vision?
Right.
How do I get you to believe in my vision? Because you also have a vision.
Right.
Then that sort of started me going on to think about, okay, but vision is just much more than my vision.
Right.
And then I actually created a whole pile of documents around that by saying, but vision's got multiple angles.
Right.
So if you look at various kind of leaders, people don't buy into his vision. Right. Then they don't leave.
Right.
So now my mind's thinking about that. Oh, how do I do this? And then sometimes I read about character, and I come across a decision that I made, and then I thought, gee, but this character thing is an interesting thing.
Right.
And I go through my library and say, okay, how many stories do I have about character?
Right.
And
then actually picking out the chapters from that, adding that. So you're much more using that as not to read from cover to cover to know the story, but really the things that are just trying to add to the thing that you're trying to solve in your head now. That you're cycling, when you're cycling, you're running through it in your mind, and want to go and pick on the various bodies of knowledge to add
absolutely.
to that.
And then I think about coaching. And I think about, okay, so now I've got to chat to somebody, and what's going to be their high in their basement moment.
Yeah.
And there must be something that I can have a good story about it. Right. I love reading about other people's stories,
right.
you know. So recently in one of the books that I just going through about vision, the story was there about Kodak,
right.
that missed the digital camera.
Right, exactly.
Innovation.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody said no.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's like, we never want to have somebody that says no.
Exactly, yeah.
And you read, and then I read the story about how the containers was developed.
Right.
It's like fascinating about the ecosystem of people that lived near the harbor. And these things give me inspiration again for coming back to our business.
Applying that back in the business.
Yeah,
how do you make things repeatable? How do you make things scalable?
Exactly. So everything goes for me back to the individual working for us,
right.
of how to change that person's life.
Right.
But it's not about changing life just in wealth,
right.
but in changing that person's, how that person see the world, right. and how that person will change somebody else.
Right.
About discovering you, because that for me is again about the innovative part of it. It becomes part of your world.
Right. So we've got 2 more questions. I'll do a quick fire round at the end. But kind of to wrap up what some of the things that we're saying and have been chatting about now, what do the teams have to look forward to? What do we want the team members looking at this and watching this, and some of our clients watching? What do we want them to kind of take away from our shares today?
I think for me, and as with you, is that number one, anything is possible.
Yeah.
And that you just have to do it.
Right.
The second thing is you've got to be patient.
Right.
I think a lot of people want things to happen too fast.
That's right.
And I always have the example of you can have a sunflower growth,
right.
grows fast, or you can have an acorn.
Right.
Acorn that builds a big oak tree. That makes a difference. And then the third thing for me is that how does your life change as a person? Have you become a different person in the way, the lenses that you see life?
Right.
Are you a giver or are you a taker?
Right.
We want everybody that's been through the world with us to become givers.
That's right.
Not a taker.
That's right.
Because that when you're a taker, you always need oxygen.
That's right.
When you're a giver, you give oxygen.
That's right.
And yes, we can do a lot of innovation, a lot of great things. But for me, the bottom line is are you a changed person?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. How do I feel after being part of it? How do I reflect on my day? What story do I tell when I get home? Yes, there's always the challenge of this, but we actually solved it in this way, or wow, we achieved this together. That's some of the things that we want people to take away. A couple of quick fire questions. Thank you for your time. I asked the dev team some of these questions, so let's see what your answers are.
I'm going to fail on those.
AWS or Azure?
Azure.
For sure. Apple or Android?
Apple.
For sure. You're winning so far. You're up. What is your favorite place to eat at the moment? Your favorite restaurant?
So I was going to say it's Willoughby's.
Willoughby's?
The sushi place in the waterfront.
And your favorite meal there?
I would say the Japanese platter.
Proper. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Daniel. It's fantastic to chat to you, and thank you for your insights and wisdom.
Oh, thank you, Andre. And so for everybody that watched this as well, so Andre spent 10 days with us from Amsterdam.
That's right.
During the lockdown, went through multiple tests to be here. He's going to go through multiple tests to go back.
Correct.
Hopefully I will go and see him in September.
Please do.
If I am on the green list or orange list to go, if we want to go and see the Grand Prix.
That's right.
So yeah, Andre, from our side, you made a big mark, and thank you for the time that you spent with in the business as well, and also the learnings that I got from you. The interesting thing, and also closing from my side with you, is the challenge. There's always been the big challenge that we challenge one another. Mm-hmm. So I've got the special areas that I remember when we had a discussion about the 48 shareholding.
Right.
Right. So I had this idea in my mind. You had that idea in mind. I was like, no, I think I'm just going to go it. Andre, let's do it. You know, and it worked out.
Brilliant.
And now the new things that we do. So my advice to other people that are, don't be scared to share.
Right. It's more fun doing it with partners.
It's more fun doing it with partners.
Of course, more complex, but it's just more fun.
But have a clear path, have a clear philosophy, but be open, discuss, talk about it. You know, sometimes it doesn't work or whatever, but just have a conversation. So thank you for spending time with us. And everybody is so happy to see you.
And very welcoming. Fantastic to see everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dankie.